Mahatma Gandhi's disciple Ramchandran asked him, "Are you against machinery, Bapuji?" Gandhi replied, "How can I be when I know that even this body is the most delicate piece of machinery? What I object to is the craze for machinery. The craze is for what they call labor-saving machinery. Men go on saving labor till thousands are without work and thrown on the open streets to die of starvation."
This is Sevagram, the ashram or community from which Gandhi led India's struggle for independence. Every day, some of his disciples come to the porch of his hut to spin in silence. For Gandhi, the charkha, or spinning wheel, was the ideal machine. It was for him a symbol of self-reliance. And Gandhi believed that the success of Indian independence and development depended upon the self-reliance of its 580,000 villages. But today, most of India's cloth is spun and woven in large textile mills. India's machines and factories rival those of any country. She is the 11th largest industrial nation in the world. Japan, England, Russia, the United States have all contributed money and technology to India's remarkable growth. But every year, Indians can buy more products made in India.
मेरा जूता है जापानी, ये पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी, सर पे लाल टोपी रूसी, फिर भी दिल है हिंदुस्तानी। मेरा जूता है जापानी, ये पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी, सर पे लाल टोपी रूसी, फिर भी दिल है हिंदुस्तानी। मेरा जूता है जापानी।
Take this one. But there is another India as well, not prosperous, for which industrialization has meant only a widening gap between poverty and riches. India has more than 650 million people. 40% of them earn less than 25 cents a day. 20 million Indians have no employment. The machinery of modern India has become self-sufficient, but not its people. Since independence, India has pursued a policy of heavy industrialization and the building of cities. But the cities are islands, surrounded by the unsolved problem of extreme unemployment. It's a labor-saving society with 20 million people out of work. Bombay's skyline doesn't look much different from this one, New York City. But a leading Indian scientist, Dr. Amulya Reddy, questions the appropriateness of such a model.
What I see around me is the great dream which has mesmerized the decision makers in the developing countries. The skyscrapers, the automobiles, the stores, and the whole infrastructure of industrialization upon which this has been based. And what these decision makers have tried to do over the past 25 years or 30 years is to replicate this pattern of development. But I wonder whether what they've attempted to do and what has succeeded to very limited extents in limited pockets in the cities of the developing world have any relevance to the poorest sections of humanity who are located there.
The economic and industrial policies of the last 25 years culminated in crisis in June 1975. Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister of India, but no relation to Mahatma Gandhi, declared a state of emergency in an attempt to deal with the inflation, poverty, unemployment, and the constantly increasing number of people in the world's already most densely populated country. However, after 2 years, members of Mrs. Gandhi's own party felt the results did not justify the means. Thousands of political opponents had been jailed. There had been attempts at forced sterilization of the peasants and urban poor. Slums were destroyed without plans for the future of their residents, and news was censored. With unrest again growing in her own party, Mrs. Gandhi moved to consolidate her power once and for all by suddenly declaring elections. The result? A strong vote for a complete change in policy and leadership, a change which was led by the most beloved Gandhian today, Jayaprakash Narayan. Narayan, who died recently, gathered together several political parties and united them by their mutual hostility toward the emergency. He called for a return to the Gandhian beliefs which had been so successful in helping to win independence. Morarji Desai, prominent in Indian politics since independence and jailed by Mrs. Gandhi during the emergency, won the election to become leader of the newly formed Janata Party.
We belong to 5-6 different bodies, group political parties, and they had different programs, and they were warring people, but they have all agreed on one program, which is the Gandhian program, and the Gandhian method. The Gandhian method means the means that you use for whatever you do must be pure. Now, purity consists in truth, and it consists in not harming another people for your benefit. That is the meaning of pure means. And that is the basis on which our whole program is based.
Perhaps Mrs. Gandhi's most outspoken opponent during the emergency was George Fernandez, a powerful union leader. He was elected to Parliament from his jail cell and became the Janata Party's Minister of Industry.
And so the new thrust that was introduced last year, when we decided that we shall move away from the capital intensive to the labor intensive, from the centralized to the decentralized, and from the urban to the rural. And along with this came this question of appropriate technology.
The words appropriate technology herald international recognition of the failure of high technology to meet the needs of all societies at all times.
You pursued an industrial policy.
George Fernandez is speaking before a meeting of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization held in Delhi. The Janata Party government introduced a national policy based upon getting technology out of the city and into the countryside and putting man's need for a job above the dictates of machinery. The rest of the world is watching. Can a country which for decades has committed itself to developing large technological centers turn around and redirect its economy to small-scale development?
So there is an apparent clash, there is an apparent conflict. But it is not a conflict of technologies as it is a conflict of the kind of industrial culture that one wants to have. Whether profits should go to one company, to a dozen companies, large-sized, maybe widely held, or whether there shall be hundreds and thousands of small little entrepreneurs producing the same item, making it available to the people where it is needed, but in the process, by the application of appropriate technology, creating many more jobs than what a machine can produce.
In conjunction with the United Nations Forum on Appropriate Technology, the Indian government held an unusual trade fair. The idea was to show how many modern products can be made in small, decentralized factories using assembly line labor. That's how at least some parts of each of these goods are made. Millions of people visited the pavilions, which house exhibits from the 22 states of India. The government's most recent 5-year plan projects the transfer of 500 products from large to small-scale factory units using fewer machines and more workers.
from the point of view of happiness of man, who must be the main aim of all things that you do, it is that which is more useful, and therefore it is a happy blending of the heavy industries, the medium industries, small-scale industries, and the cottage industries that we are attempting. It's not exclusively small-scale industries only which you are paying, because without heavy industries, modern life cannot be maintained. You can't have railways, you can't have electricity, you can't have transport, you can't have communication. They depend only on heavy industries, metals. All these require heavy industries. But that doesn't solve the problem of human needs.
If you mean to find the jobs to those who must be provided with jobs, and not in 10-year and 20-year frames or on a long-term basis, but here and now, then we are confronted with the problem of 40 million unemployed who are just there, apart from a large number of underemployed. You're also faced with the problem of about 6 million people who come into the employment market every year. And it is only the development of a technology that is appropriate to meet the needs of these people, in other words, creating jobs for them, that is relevant for us.
To employ one person in a big industry, you require an investment of 25,000 rupees, 250,000 rupees per person. And in a small industry of this conception, it requires only 500 to 5,000. So in the same capital, you can employ 10 times the people.
This is what Moraji Desai is talking about. Thousands of farmers from many miles around bring their sugarcane harvest to the nearest sugarcane factory. In the traditional mode of large-scale technologies, a single factory can make sugar from the cane produced by thousands of farmers. It will cost many millions of dollars to build and end up employing just a few hundred people. This is also a sugar factory. The designer is Mr. Garg, an engineer, who is showing it to George McRobie, a British advocate of small-scale technologies. Mr. Garg's so-called mini-factories are in fact world-renowned. This factory is 1/10 the size, 1/40th the cost of a large-scale sugar factory. Yet for a given output, it employs 10 times as many people. The factory cuts down on the amount of equipment and combines the functions of some of the machinery so that even with the larger payroll for salaries, sugar can be sold at about the same price. Because these many factories are cheaper, more can be built. Farmers do not need to travel for a day and then spend more precious days waiting in line before they can get back to their fields. Mr. Garg has developed a similar technology for cement plants, but these have not fared as well. Cement is a big business in India, and until now, the business has been mostly in the hands of large factory complexes. George Fernandez explains.
Do you know that the first mini cement plant in this country was set up in 1962? But in the meanwhile, the cement advisor to the government of India was an agent of a cement manufacturing, large-scale cement manufacturing unit based somewhere in Sweden or somewhere in Europe. So you had a cement advisor who was for the large, and you had a technology which was of the small. Now, the two possibly couldn't have gone together. But in my view, you can have several hundred I would say 1,000, 2,000 mini cement plants in this country producing anything between 30 tons to 100 tons per day. You know, last year China produced about 50 million tons of cement. Of this, 29 million tons came from 2,900 mini cement plants, varying in capacity from 1 ton per day to 30 tons per day. And you can do that here in this country. We have the technology, we have the wherewithal, but there is a resistance.
Naturally enough, the resistance comes from big business. Mr. Bhaskari, general manager of a large industrial complex, describes his reaction to the policies of the Janata Party government.
Well, I feel that if the present policy, which I think is dictated more on political considerations rather than on economic considerations, continues for any length of time, it would be headed towards bankruptcy. One of the factors which is often, I'm sure it's not forgotten, but it's deliberately put out of sight, is the fact that our population growth rate is so tremendous. On the one hand, our politicians always bring this point up when negotiating for loans from countries abroad or negotiating trade agreements with the developed countries. But on the other side, when dictating our industrial policies, they put this out of sight completely. We just can't afford the luxury, I feel, of slowing down our economic growth rate by even a fraction in order to try and dissipate the means of production into the rural areas and into the masses. We just can't afford it at this stage.
The kind of cloth sold in this store is surrounded by controversy for some of the reasons pointed out by Mr. Bhaskari. It is worn by those who wish to state their commitment to the Gandhian tenet of self-reliance. The material is khadi, hand-spun, hand-woven cotton. However, the peasants of the villages that Gandhi cherished cannot afford this cloth. It is more expensive than cloth made by the big mills. The problem is in the spinning of the yarn. Those who would like to ensure that khadi remains pure, that is, entirely handmade, are attempting to make the spinning process more efficient by developing small, hand-run machines which allow you to spin several spools at once. But so far, it cannot compete with machine-spun yarn. Many village women cannot even afford the cloth for 1 sari a year, costing $1. The Janata Party government wanted a kind of compromise, mill-spun yarn but hand-woven cloth. The yarn could be put on small spindles so that hand weavers could work with it. This process may still prove to be more expensive than buying cloth from the large textile mills. But there are almost 6 million hand weavers in India, most unemployed or underemployed. On the one hand, there is the problem of raising consumer prices. On the other hand, massive unemployment. Moraji Desai wants decentralized industry in order to revitalize the villages and provide jobs. Mr. Bhaskari sees less government interference as the best answer.
If they remove all the red tape and the restrictions on that and avoid trying to put hedges around industry for a period of 10 years, I think we'll see the Indian economy flourish, and the very people that the government is wanting to benefit, the rural poor, they will flourish. And let government also ensure that the wealth that is generated is genuinely siphoned towards those weaker sections of society, which is a government responsibility.
But towns are few and villages are many. As 80% people live there. And they are natural surroundings. Towns are all artificial surroundings. If more than that, we have 620 million people. And the modern big industries, we have also many. But they have not solved the employment problem. They can't. The moment there is a big industry, even if it is in a village, it becomes a city. It doesn't remain a village, and it has its own industrial surrounding. And agriculture is the main basis of this country's prosperity also, and its civilization and happiness. It is therefore that we have got to pay more attention to the prosperity of the villages.
It is the peasant who has shared least in India's economic growth. Their life on the surface is much the way it has been for centuries. For the farmer who owns 2 or 3 acres of land and 2 bullocks, much could be done to improve his lot. For the leather worker, the potter, and the cloth maker, there is less work than before, as more factories produce goods in the cities and market them throughout the towns and villages.
Every village in India has a potter, maybe 2 potters. Now you set up factories that produced plastic tumblers and glass tumblers and chinaware and whatnot. In the process, you denied to the poor potter his job in the village without creating an alternative job for him. Now what you should have done was, even when you went into the core sector, you should have had a blend where it would have been possible for you to utilize the services of the potter. When you went in to produce shoes, let us say, with the use of machines, you should have also had a blend where it was possible for you to provide jobs to the village cobbler. So this is where things went wrong.
Clay cups were at one time used everywhere for tea, in train stations and tea houses along the roads. They were used only once, so millions were used yearly. Now plastic cups are used. If the government could reinstitute the use of these clay cups in all railroad stations, there would be an enormous increase in work for local potters. Once work is available, methods can be improved. This is Jurai, who is now going to demonstrate the difference between his old potter's wheel and this new one, which was given to him to try out by a local polytechnic college.
चक्का ही ठीक है जो है आप भेजे मतलब जरा हल्का हो जाए छोटा हो जाए यही ठीक.
The new wheel, says Jurai, has a firm base, which means that it spins more evenly and for a longer time.
मैं चेक सब ठीक है बोला भाई छोटा हो जाए और बराबर हो जाए बस.
But it's also uncomfortable to use because the base should be set into the ground. The Polytechnic school, which provided Jurai with his new wheel, is in Allahabad, a city in north-central India. The school has a long-standing program in developing rural, small-scale technologies. They have been successful in selling small-scale agricultural and craft implements to hundreds of villagers in their area. Now, since the new government emphasis on appropriate technologies, the program is becoming a model for polytechnic institutes throughout India, a country which has the third largest number of scientists and technical workers in the world already, but few of them concerned with small-scale technologies. The Polytechnic loans people the money to buy equipment. Once the loan is repaid, they do the same for someone else. This cobbler, once almost out of business because of competition from factory-made shoes, has already made enough money to repay the Polytechnic for his leather stitching machine. The Polytechnic, with some seed money from a German foundation called Bread for the World, has started a program called Integrated Village and Rural Development. The advisor, on leave from Xerox Corporation, is Abhay Bhushan. He grew up near these villages and has come back to work with the Polytechnic's program. In just a few months, he has started projects in 30 villages. He is on his way to visit Sunderlal, who has started a bicycle shop here by the side of the road.
बॉल बेरिंग इसका तो बॉल बेरिंग इसमें बॉल बेरिंग लगा हुआ हाँ हाँ तो तुम लगा लेते हो कहाँ है बेरिंग तुम्हारा इसमें सब हुआ है इसमें बॉल बेरिंग पूरा रहता है हाँ अच्छा सब छल्ला वाला सब लगा देते हो बॉल साइकिल की चीज है ये हाँ जितने सामान है सब इसी का पुर्जा है what we have done over here is we have given a loan of 500 rupees for spare parts for bicycles so he can increase his income पूरा complete bicycle हाँ ठीक कर लेते हो Before that, he was only fixing punctures and just doing minor repair work. And he was earning about 4 or 5 rupees a day. But now with our spare parts and things, he can do the complete repair of a bicycle. And his earning has doubled. फायदा ही हुआ कि साहब जो हम काम करते हैं जो साइकिल बिगड़ गई जिसकी तो आया बनवाने हमारे पास अगर सामान नहीं रहेगा तो मैं उसमें लगाएंगे क्या अच्छा Since he has increased his business, people come here and stop to get their bicycles fixed. So a pan wala has come over here and selling his pan, bidi and cigarettes. And he's found it, and sometimes a barber also comes along to help people while their bicycles are being fixed. So this sort of a way commerce develops in the village. The village market in Sevai is the oldest village market in this area. And its market like this is very important to the commerce of this area. And our project has started several markets that in several other villages that are bi-weekly markets and that are really helping the whole commerce. Now this particular gamcha, which is a traditional cloth that people use, has been made at our handloom center and is now being sold in the village market. It is being sold for 4 rupees and 25 paisa, which is roughly about 50 cents. And the design over here is bigger than the normal one you see that other people are selling here for 4 rupees. So people are buying quite a number of these things. In fact, we have sold in the last month about 200 of these. And it's all handmade on the hand loom.
In these villages, hand weaving had almost been forgotten. Now, once again, young villagers are learning the skills and increasing the income of their families. A fully trained weaver, whose family earned about $25 a month, has been able to double that amount. This handloom center was built in a village of untouchables. Gandhi called them Harijans, children of God. Indian society is composed of castes or classes of people. Harijans are below even the lowest caste. They have been called untouchables because no other Indian should be touched by them. If this were to happen, the person touched would have to go through ritual cleansings to regain his purity. For 30 years, India has had laws to prevent the practice of untouchability, and many improvements have taken place. In fact, the Minister of Defense in the last government was a Harijan. But Harijans still live in separate villages and may be prevented from drawing water from the well of non-Harijans or from walking across their land. Independence ended the rule of the feudal-like lords in the villages. They were usually wealthy members of a high farmer or warrior caste. They built town walls, man-made lakes, wells, and temples. They were judge and jury, protector and punisher. Yet with their passing, village life has changed little. Castes differentiate between occupations, such as artisan and farmer, and between levels of wealth and social prestige. Today, low caste still obeys high caste. Tradition and the entrapment of poverty give place slowly to changes and development. This truck is owned by a middle caste farmer who also has the money to rent a tractor and to build a well. But for most of the villagers, renting a tractor or building a well to irrigate their land is far beyond their means. About 72% of India's farmlands are unirrigated, so only one crop a year during the monsoon season may be possible. This farmer rents water from his well at an hourly rate of 60 cents, enough to irrigate about 1/4 acre. The average landholding is about 1 1/2 acres, so a relatively small amount of water and money is all that's necessary to grow 1 or 2 extra crops a year. But even so, the money to buy water is out of the reach of many farmers. Some are able to take advantage of the national irrigation canals that are beginning to crisscross India. In 1977 alone, 7 million acres were brought under irrigation. Landless peasants work to irrigate somebody else's fields. This farmer is not landless, but both because of a firm faith in the traditional way of doing things and because of a lack of money, he is not benefiting from the introduction of small-scale technologies into his community.
Over here, this is one of the traditional farmers who has 2 or 3 acres of land, but he did not convert to modern methods of irrigation with tube well irrigation or using fertilizers or using pest control or modern methods. So what's happening is that he's not able to earn as much, and what this results in, he's not able to make more crops per year, and some of his land he's not able to sow at all in the crop season.
इसके लिए पैसा नहीं था और फिर दोबारा सोचा कि इसको लगा दो, आपसे आप तो पड़ती है, इसमें पैसा लगा दिया है ढूंढ के, इसमें नहीं जुआ.
What is a shortage of capital? One field he has been able to convert, putting his money in this potato sowing in this other field, but the rest of them he has not been able to get the money and the resources to convert to modern methods.
आप पिछले साल में साहब
सीजन में कितना हुआ एक सीजन में?
आपकी सीजन में क्यों आगे वाले सीजन में?
पिछले वाले सीजन में.
पिछले वाले सीजन में साहब मजे हो गया मगर
he earned about 500 rupees in a season, so which is about 3 months or 4 months growing season. So that means he earns less than 2,000 rupees a year.
एक बीघा आलू बोरे 500 रुपया हमने.
And the major this thing is sometimes price goes down and sometimes the crop failure. Or his production in paddy, for example, was 1/3 the average. For the land, he only earned 15 boris on the land. Other people earn 50. They produce 50 boris or 50 bags.
कर्जों में साहब देते रहे और लेते रहे और देते रहे हैं, कर्ज भी देते हैं.
He spends it all on his food and clothing for his kids, etc. With the money, he also gets some water for irrigation, the leftover for irrigation after something, and he also takes loans and then he repays the loans. But he's not able to quite get enough.
अरे 100-200 रुपया होगा.
He says he only has 100-200 rupees with a local money lender, but he has not taken any other loans. उस लोन से आपका फायदा हुआ था?
हाँ साहब, कुछ फायदा जरूर.
क्या फायदा हुआ था?
फायदा ये हुआ साहब.
Several years ago, he had taken a loan for 2 years from the State Bank for 1,200 rupees to repay the local money lender. So he really did not have any of that loan to spend in his crops, just paying the local money lender who charges exorbitant interest rates.
Abhay wants Mr. Shital Prasad to consider renting water from a newly introduced kind of well called a tube well.
What we are suggesting to him is that we provide him methods of irrigation, either his own tube well or provide enough tube wells so the cost of water goes down. The way our program works, he does not have to buy it. He can just rent it on a daily basis, and 1 or 2 days a year he would need, or 1 or 2 days a season, and he only has to pay 2 rupees.
Tube wells are perhaps the most encouraging way of getting water to farmers in the near future. They can be made easily with manual labor and can tap more water because they go deeper than other manually built wells.
What I'm talking about is the tube well boring over here. This process has been done by hand. In fact, we have first dug a well about 27-30 feet deep from the surface, and this was entirely done by hand. After that, we have bored a tube well 4-inch diameter and turned it by hand with an auger. A few people sitting down there at this level and turning with the auger. And we have gone down to a total depth of about 85 feet. Total depth from the surface to down here. And we found water at about 35 feet or 40 feet, somewhere down here. And now what we are doing is cleaning this up so a cavity would form over here. And if the cavity forms well over here, we might leave it as it is. But very often this layer of water, the first layer, is not very good. So we have to go down to the second layer of water, another 50 feet down, and then get the water from the second layer. The difference is an ordinary well is dug all the way down to the complete depth. This one, you just take a 4-inch pipe and then you pump. You have to use some sort of a pumping mechanism to get the water out. In the ordinary well, you can use a bucket or you can use any of the traditional methods. But in tube well, you must have a pump.
Diesel pumps cost money to buy and maintain. They are certainly out of the reach for the marginal farmer. But for a farmer with enough capital, small-scale improvements can create ever-increasing benefits. With improved seeds and fertilizer, these fields will yield 3 more crops than those of Mr. Prasad. Cows are also essential, as they provide the potential source of fertilizer. Mr. Ramparos Verma owns 3 cows. He also owns a remarkable device called a gobar gas plant, which the Village and Rural Development Project helped to install.
What I asked, this is Mr. Ramparos Verma, who is a progressive farmer of this village. He has recently installed a gobar gas plant. He has 3 animals, and this is enough to provide gas for all his cooking and all his lighting. In addition, he gets improved manure over here, which is very good for the fields. And he's very happy with this plant. This is one of our major objectives, is to provide such plants in the villages. We get about 20 or 30 orders per month. The way it works is you put cow dung in the input tank. It goes inside the gobar gas plant where it ferments, and in a few days, the gas starts coming up. And the gas collects inside this holder over here. And the output is processed slurry, which is improved manure. It is twice as rich in nitrogen as ordinary manure in an open pit. The gas that's produced over is trapped inside this drum, and then it comes through this particular pipe into a trap, which traps all the moisture in the gas, and then it goes directly into his kitchen.
Cooking is one of the most time-consuming chores in the household. Traditionally, with a large family, the preparation of meals may take up most of the day. The Gobar gas plant cuts this time down significantly.
This is another alternative to large-scale fertilizers, where you not only get improved fertilizer and manure, but in addition, you get energy.
This methane lamp provides light for free. Women have campaigned for candidates who have promoted community Gobar gas plants. For most of the villagers, however, cow dung and firewood remain necessary. Both are now precious commodities. Many regions of India are becoming deforested, and people often have to gather firewood many miles from the village. Women and children spend hours collecting cow dung and making paddies, a source of good fertilizer that never gets used. But the existence of Gobar gas plants has created a problem for some. Poor farmers who have no bullocks are less likely than ever to find cow dung free for the taking. India's small farmers are making gains at the expense of its truly impoverished peasants. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Integrated Village and Rural Development Project is the evening adult literacy class. After a long day's work, farmers come to learn the alphabet.
बीच में सिंह साहब आए हुए हैं कुछ आपके सामान्य ज्ञान के बारे में कुछ बताएंगे.
There are also guest speakers from the nearby colleges to give agricultural advice.
ऐसा है कि मैं थोड़ा सा गेहूं के बारे में आप लोगों को यह बताना चाहता हूं कि किस तरह से गेहूं की खेती करें कि अच्छी उपज हो. जमीन जो है मिट्टी का शोधन होना चाहिए. उसके लिए हेप्टाक्लोर नाम की एक दवा आती है जिसको मिलाने से उसमें पहले से जो मौजूद कीड़े, दीमक इत्यादि या तरह तरह के कीड़े रहते हैं वे मर जाते हैं. इसके लिए गेहूं हम पहले नई वैरायटियों जैसे कि उन्नतशील जात के गेहूं हैं. इस समय RR21
करबै गौना के सुधार दल के नेता बन के गौना के सुधार दल के नेता बन के करबै गौना के सुधार के नेता बन के नहीं ना करबै कार दल के नेता बन के दल के नेता बन के दल के नेता बन के शिक्षा और सहयोग भावना घर घर में फैलौबै.
This is Ajapura, a village in the state of Gujarat. Ajapura and 900 other villages are using this simple but efficient technique to test the butterfat content of milk. The results are important because they determine how much a farmer will be paid for his milk. The villagers are part of a unique dairy cooperative movement which began during India's struggle for independence and continues to spread throughout the countryside. For peasants who are too poor to make individual improvements, a cooperative effort can bring hope. Dr. Kurian, manager of the cooperative.
The cooperative movement here began in 1946-47. And before that, there was a private dairy collecting milk. Now, one of the things to be remembered is that milk is probably the only agricultural commodity that needs to be marketed twice a day, every day of the year. And it's a highly perishable commodity. If the farmer cannot sell it, it's a dead loss to him. The private dairy had a contractor in each village to collect milk. And because of the perishable nature of milk, the farmer had to accept whatever price was paid to him. And therefore, there was gross exploitation of the farmer in the marketing of milk. And this was the main reason why a cooperative became necessary. When you go to the villages, you will find that 250,000 farmers are standing in line twice a day, every day of the year, to deliver their milk at 900 milk collecting centers. Now you will also find that in this line, they stand irrespective of sex, irrespective of caste. This may not be very obvious to you, but to us it took us several years to get this done. And in the line you will see what is referred to as a Harijan, an untouchable. You will also see a high caste Hindu who is a Brahmin. You will see a Muslim. And they stand in line irrespective of the caste, irrespective of their religion, in the order in which they come. What does it do to a Harijan to stand in front of a high caste Brahmin because he came earlier? And this he has to do twice a day, every day of the year. What does it do to a high caste to stand behind an untouchable twice a day, every day of the year? Is it only orderly milk collection? Is it not a blow at the caste system? The cooperative movement here in milk has enabled them to double their income, because each farmer here has approximately 1.7 buffaloes, and that is all. They are all small farmers. Most of them are marginal farmers, and many are landless laborers. The well-to-do farmers are hardly 5% of our membership. Now it is found that when farmers market their milk cooperatively, they get about double what they used to get before. Not only because exploitation of the farmers is removed, but also because the yields have gone up thanks to better feeding, better breeding, better management of cattle, all of which are taught to the farmers by extension workers employed by the cooperative. Then we have a veterinary service, which guarantees to the farmers in their villages a visit by a veterinarian once they ask for him, within 4 hours of asking for him. It's the most elaborate system of veterinary care in the country. What does it do to them to see modern medicine and modern science displayed in the village, under village conditions? What we find is they begin to ask, what about our health? What about a human health service?
The role of women in these villages has been especially enhanced by the cooperative movement, since it is the women who usually are charged with the milking and care of the cows.
We have a scheme by which we bring women from the villages to show them their dairy. What does it do to them to come into Anand, walk into the dairy, and to see the magnificent buildings as they think, the gleaming stainless steel, and to believe they own a bit of it, they have some say in the running of it, and above all, they have a share in the profits of it. And they go home that night. Don't they walk home a little more proudly?
By working as a cooperative, the villagers have become the owners of the entire process of milk distribution and the manufacture of milk products for the surrounding cities.
every field of agricultural production. I believe the time has come when the means of processing and marketing farmer produce should be in farmers' own hands, not in the hands of government, not in the hands of private trade, but increasingly in the hands of farmers' own hands, so that he can truly develop, because true development is development of man. And in a country of 75% farmers, it must mean the development of farmers.
These members of the dairy cooperative have found that cooperation offers an escape from poverty. They have set up their own tube well cooperative.
So these, small and marginal farmers, 68 farmers, they combine together and they purchase this well after getting the loan from the bank. 114,000 rupees. And then they started this society, cooperative society of this water. And there are 68 members now. They are supplying 145 acres.
Estimate तैयार जिला पंचायत हमने तालुका पंचायत मार्फत नक्की करावड़ाયું.
And he says that previously they were charging 22 rupees per hour's work.
45 એકર જમીનની અંદર પાણી ફરશે એ રીતનું એસ્ટિમેટ નક્કી કર્યું.
And now it is being charged only 7 rupees and 50 paisa only.
નક્કી કરી આપ્યું અને 1,14,000 ના એસ્ટિમેટ પેટે તાલુકા પંચાયતે અમને 57,000 રૂપિયા સબસિડી આપવાની નક્કી કરી.
Are these people members of the dairy cooperative?
આ જો સભાસદો છે એ ડેરી કોઓપરેટિવના પણ મેમ્બરો છે. હા. They are the members of the cooperative society, milk cooperative society.
Has that increased their income?
એ મેમ્બર થયા પછી એ સોસાયટીમાં તમારે જો લાભમાં વધારે થયું છે એમાંથી તમારે કેટલું લાભ વધારે થયું?
કોઓપરેટિવ એમ કે દૂધની સોસાયટી ચાલુ થતો.
After forming the cooperative milk society also those people are very much benefited.
સારા પ્રમાણમાં પૈસા મળતા થયા.
Because previously they were getting very less milk from the middleman. Now they are getting very good profit. That is what the people say.
Is there anything else they would like to tell us about? I mean, is there any? Those are all the questions I have.
તમારે આ સોસાયટીના બાબતમાં તમને બીજું કશું કહેવા જેવું બાબતો હોય તમે કહી શકાય.
આ સોસાયટી માટે અમારે હજુ ઘણી મુશ્કેલીઓ બીજી દેખાય છે.
Now these people want to form the cooperative society of the tractors.
મુશ્કેલીઓ છે ખેડવા માટેના જો એમ કે મોટા લોકો જે ટ્રેક્ટરનો ખેડે છે.
For field work, these tractors are kept by the landlords and they are just getting the benefits out of that.
અને ખેડૂતોને સારા દામે અમે ઉત્પન્ન કરી શકે.
So that all the these small farmers they will be benefited out of that cooperative society.
ટ્રેક્ટર લાવવાની પણ અમારી હજુ એમ કે ધારણા ચાલુ રહી છે.
Now, this is not merely a task of creating jobs. This is not merely a question of technology. This is also a question of the kind of social and economic order that you are going to have. And I would like to assure you that both as a socialist and as a man who belongs today to the Janata Party, in which all the socialists are also members, well, our commitment to bringing about a egalitarian order in this country is total. Ultimately, it is not enough for a convinced socialist or for a few committed people somewhere to talk about the revolt of the masses. The masses can revolt, the masses can stand on their own when they have the physical and the mental stamina to do that. In our country, they have been denied that. And the whole thrust into the rural areas is also helping you. It's providing you with an infrastructure to bring about the kind of change that you're talking about and to which all of us are committed.
I want to save time and labor, not for a fraction of mankind, but for all. I want the concentration of wealth, not in the hands of a few, but in the hands of all. Today, machinery merely helps a few to ride on the backs of millions. The impetus behind it all is not the philanthropy to save labor, but greed. It is against this constitution of things that I am fighting with all my might.
For a transcript, send $2 to this address. This program was produced by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding for NOVA is provided by this station and by other public television stations. Additional funding is provided by grants from TRW and the National Science Foundation.